I'm going to talk about Blood Cult, which is a 1985 shot on video. It's like the...
God damn it, John.
It's marketed. It's marketed.
Just like just the thing that I expect you to say exactly.
Look, but I'm going to bring up the fact that...
From the 80s, shot on video, the words blood and cult in the title. I'm just like, yep, okay.
Welcome to Afterthoughts. This is our recommend or refute episode. Where
he got it, folks.
Yeah, he landed it.
Yeah, if I think about just that, I will fuck up everything else, but I got that. Yeah. This is our podcast where we tell you about something we recently watched, and this time we tell you whether we recommend it or we refute it, or sometimes we sit on the fence. A lot of times we sit on the fence. But let's get into it. I am your host, Ryan King, tonight, but with me are our regulars, John Garcia.
Hey, Ryan, I'm bringing the schlock, baby. Here we go again. He's back.
Not surprised.
Dixon, an enthusiastic sigh from Dixon, folks, as the crowd looks on.
Yeah, October is sneaking up on him. He feels good now, but it's closer than you think. It'll be here.
John's getting ready. He's dipping his toe into the Schlocktober standing water.
That's right. It's putrid, my friends.
Yes, and the other voice you hear joining us, Michael Dixon.
Oh, man. All right. I brought a good movie to the table, and I'm really excited to talk about it. And then we'll hear John talk about whatever the fuck he watched.
Yeah. I brought a good movie as well that I watched a good movie with my family.
Hey.
So it's
nice.
Congratulations.
Probably isn't a family movie, but we'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
Dixon, why don't you start us off with what did you watch that was a reasonable good movie?
Yeah, so I watched a new 2024 documentary called Made in England, The Films of Powell and Pressburger.
Some of the very first moving images that I can remember seeing are from Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger.
I have never met a person who not only understood what I was driving at, but guessed already half of it before I said it.
They were like experimental filmmakers working within the system.
Do we have a go at each other?
Not really. In a few hours' time, he sees that I was right.
They want to go beyond everyday experiences and communicate what is deep and mysterious in our lives.
I love you, June. Your life, and I'm leaving you.
You say that because you love her!
I don't love anyone!
And it's something that no other art form can do. It's pure film.
Everybody happy?
They wanted to hang on to their independence, and they suffered because of it.
Why do you think it was so important for you to show somebody dying for their art?
I think because I would do it myself.
This movie is executive produced and featuring / narrated by Martin Scorsese. If you have listened to this podcast, you probably know that I'm a big Scorsese fan. Scorsese talks about Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, who are British filmmakers. Michael Powell's British. Emmerich Pressburger is a Hungarian Jew who had to flee to Britain in the 30s, and then they started making movies together. And they had famously a byline on their films, directed, written by, and produced by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. And that would show up on all of their movies to the point where, like, everyone was confused on, like, wait a minute, who is who? What do they do? How do they do it? Who is actually saying start and cut on set? Like, are these even real people? Like, there was kind of a mystique about them in America because the studios in the 60s and 70s were not eager to sell their films to television. And so TV channels needing things to play would play a lot of British films on TV. And so the films of Powell and Pressburger got a lot of play in the 50s and 60s when Scorsese was coming of age and watching a lot of movies on TV. Turns out at the same time, also Francis Ford Coppola and other kind of directors of that era had watched a lot of Powell and Pressburger films on TV during that time, but none of them knew who these people were. And there were a lot of British directors who were getting acclaim in America at the time. There were books being written about Alfred Hitchcock, David Lean, other directors from Britain that were getting a lot of acclaim over here, and really nothing was being written about Powell and Pressburger. And Scorsese talks about as a kid, he was like, are these pseudonyms? Is this like, are these even real people? Like what's going on here? And he talks about his own kind of discovery of their films as a kid. And then as an adult, after he made Mean Streets, he was in the UK showing the film off and asked about Michael Powell. He's like, does anyone know who this person is? Like, I've loved his movies and I want to know more about him. And he finally found somebody who's like, oh yeah, I know Michael Powell. He's like living off the grid in some random little town and in a trailer. And Scorsese found him. He's like, that was an exaggeration. He had like a house. He wasn't living in a mobile home.
He wasn't in a van down by the river.
Not part of the film scene anymore. Is kind of been banished from the London movie making scene. And Scorsese found him and kind of brought him back into society and reintroduced him to the world. And he introduced Michael Powell to his longtime editor, Thelma Schoonmaker. They ended up getting married, Michael Powell and Thelma Schoonmaker. And then Scorsese and Thelma Schoonmaker ended up restoring the majority of Powell and Pressburger's films and bringing them into like legit 4K restorations, like bringing back a lot of their movies that had been so deteriorated over time. Especially like they're really known for their Technicolor films, and if you know anything about how Technicolor works, you have to shoot on 3 streams of film simultaneously, and so you're shooting on the camera has 3 reels going through it at all times, and then you apply different chemicals to each film. One brings out the red light, one brings out blue light, one brings out green light, and then you like interpose them on top of each other to get the final Technicolor picture. And so they had 3 strips of film that all had different issues with shrinkage and different things that like they had to figure out how do we restore these things. It was this huge project. Scorsese is like kind of the reason that we even like recognize who these guys are today, and that we understand like the kind of the power and the gravity of the films that they made in the 1940s and around that era. It was a really fascinating documentary. If you've seen any Powell and Pressburger films, you kind of understand the really powerful nature of the movies that they make. The Red Shoes is kind of their big famous masterpiece that a lot of people have seen, but a lot of people still haven't, right? It's like it was big at the time, and it kind of went away, and cinephiles have gotten into it over the last 20 years after it's kind of been brought back to the forefront, but really not a lot of people have seen it. I saw it a few years ago at the Paramount here in Austin over the summer, part of the Summer Classic Film Series. Really enjoyed it. And then Criterion put it out on 4K a couple of years ago, and I knew this documentary was coming out, so I started rewatching some Powell and Pressburger movies that I had seen before and watching some new ones that I hadn't yet seen. And I was really impressed by the movies that I went back to. The Red Shoes really knocked me on my ass. Like an absolutely incredible film. It's this massive Technicolor drama. It's like a ballet musical about this ballet company, the director of the company, the lead dancer, and the composer, and kind of how their artistic dreams interact with their personal life goals, and like kind of a study on whether it's possible to like have a personal life and be a successful artist at the same time, and can you have more than one love in your life? Like if you're a creator and into art, can you have a successful relationship at the same time as you were trying to produce great art? And it is an absolutely incredible film that I would recommend anybody check out. They've done a lot of other really great work too. A Matter of Life and Death is really good. Black Narcissus is this awesome movie about nuns at a convent in India, and like a random attractive dude comes by and it just like fucks up the whole situation. And they're famous for making their movies all on a studio set in England. Like Black Narcissus is set in India in the mountains, and it's all shot on a set in London. And it's shocking that they're able to pull that off. Like the best matte paintings I have ever seen in my life are in the film Black Narcissus, where like there are perspective matte paintings where like you're looking down a cliff and it like you think it's a real thing, but it's like a perspective matte painting that has been like they're just shooting the floor and there's a painting on the ground and they're looking down this cliff, but it looks so incredible. And like if you pause the frame and stop to like really critique it, you can be like, okay, yeah, I see how it's a painting, but it's when you're watching the movie and engrossed in it, you don't notice at all. And it's just the skill of their filmmaking is pretty incredible. The documentary gets into a lot of specifics about their filmography, how they grew up, how they came to be in the film industry, who inspired them, what they did. I think it's really interesting to learn about them as filmmakers, and having seen a lot of their movies, not all of them, there's still some I need to get to. I haven't seen The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, which is one of their more famous films. But I think a lot of the things that are really fascinating about the documentary is just seeing Scorsese just pour his love for their movies out onto the camera and talk so much about how much he loves the work that they did and how influential their movies were on his work. And like, you can see their influence on Scorsese's films. I saw an interview with Thelma Schoonmaker recently, not in the documentary, but she talked about how The Red Shoes influences literally every single movie that Martin Scorsese has ever made. And you can see, if you know The Red Shoes and you watch his movies, you can see the imprints of that film on his work in different ways, depending on the movie that he's making, some very overtly and others just kind of vague influences. But I think it's really interesting to me to see a successful director talk so lovingly about other directors that he really cares about, and the works of art that he really loves that have influenced what he has done in his life. And Scorsese talks in the documentary about how, there are movies that everyone has that just kind of stick with you and you live with them and you continue to go back to them, and you're not sure what it is that draws you back to these movies, but you end up going back to them throughout your life. And he says, as you grow older, those films grow deeper, and you understand them in a more fully fleshed out way, and you learn new things every time you watch them, and they affect you personally in a different way. And I think that's just a really interesting concept that I have found in my own life with Scorsese's films, that I continue to come back to Silence and Taxi Driver and pull new things from those movies and understand my own life in a different way as I consume those pieces of art. And seeing Scorsese talk about what has influenced him and what has driven him creatively and led to change in his life and how he views the world was just really fascinating to me. And so, like, I think Powell and Pressburger are incredible filmmakers. I highly recommend people check out their movies. But I think what makes this documentary really great is that it's not just hey, here were these guys and here's what they did.
Yeah.
It's a really personal story from Scorsese. Like, he's narrating the entire movie. It's just him talking and them showing clips from Powell and Pressburger movies and some pictures of their lives and things like that. But the movie feels almost more about Scorsese than it is about Powell and Pressburger, or really more about how artists influence other artists and how you ingest art and you're just changed forever, and it impacts who you are as a person and the type of art that you put out into the world. So I really loved this movie. It's one of my favorite films of the year so far. It was showing here in Austin at Austin Film Society. By the time this comes out, it won't be showing anymore. Unfortunately, it wasn't showing anywhere else. Draft House and Violet Crown weren't showing it. So I imagine it will be streaming pretty soon. Given the fact that Criterion loves Powell and Pressburger and Scorsese, I would imagine this will probably end up on Criterion Channel at some point in the fairly near future, or potentially other means. But I would highly recommend that anybody who loves movies and loves art, I think it's a really interesting film, Made in England, the films of Powell and Pressburger.
I think it's definitely interesting to look at we've talked somewhat about movie history and the art form. I think the other day we were talking about 3D, and I was saying how it just isn't used as a medium.
Yeah.
But this movies, they were a gimmick, but as you get into the 30s and 40s, there are people who are using it as an art form. They're definitely the big ticket movies. They were, that's the prime of Hollywood, buying a book, making a movie the fucking next week after the book was a hit.
Gable down here.
Right, yeah, and we take our studio stars and we jam them out there. But there were these artists, right, that were crafting the things, and then their influence on like Scorsese on these 60s and 70s
Mm-hmm.
that now we see as these big art house movies, these big movements, and that changed it to be like the director, right? About the director and them being the one that owns this big piece. So it's definitely an interesting snapshot to see the time period of the late 30s, an artist actually being an artist, and then how that brought Scorsese to be who he is. And he's this huge influence now on the young people putting out movies now, right?
I tend to have an allergy to things that are overly British. Like, it just kind of, the pompous British air kind of bothers me. Like, Powell and Pressburger, they're just making really great art and really great movies. And there's like a proper British attitude to some of what they do, but it's not, it doesn't feel like preachy like a lot of British
posh.
stuff does.
Is
yeah.
It like, yeah.
No, it's not that. It's really about like a lot of their films are about art and how like making art or being an artist kind of drives you as a person and the good and bad of what that can create. And their films feel more grounded and relatable to me than a lot of stuff coming out of Britain around that time, or even modern day, honestly. But they were also they were so in love with their craft of filmmaking. Like, they were innovating with everything that they were making. Like, The Red Shoes, I think, is just a fucking incredible movie. And there's a 21-minute silent sequence that's just a ballet. And it's about a ballet company, and all of a sudden the ballet happens, but it's not just filming a ballet on stage. It's like imagining what you can do with the
film.
medium of film in showing a stage ballet. And so there's like the story of, it's based on a fable, like The Red Shoes. And it's like, these this girl just falls in love with these red shoes and she wants to wear them, but then the red shoes like just kind of like, she goes to a dance, has a good time, and then the red shoes keep dancing and she can't stop, right? And they just keep going. And there's this incredible scene at the start of the ballet where she sees the shoe salesman sets them down, and then she jumps into the shoes and like lands into the shoes, and then the edit is so that like the shoes just kind of like tie themselves around her feet.
Okay.
And then she starts dancing around, and like it's very much using the camera and editing to create a more immersive experience than what you would see just watching a stage ballet. And it's a really incredible piece of filmmaking. Like, Michael Powell was very obsessed with this idea of what he called choreographed film, which was like everything is dictated and planned out, and is more of a cinema as montage and kind of creating almost like a music video type of thing that was just not something that anyone had really thought about in the 1940s. And he was kind of on the cutting edge of creating cinema like that. And it's just some of the most fascinating 20 minutes of any movie that you'll ever see. There's not a word spoken. It's just this incredible score and these incredible dance sequences that are edited together, and the camera's moving around the stage. There's so much happening, and like you can see how Scorsese was influenced by that and why he fell in love with that kind of filmmaking.
Yeah. That makes like that is the magic. We've talked plenty of times on the podcast about stage productions that are turned into film that don't utilize the medium that well, and it sounds like this is one of those cases where somebody just got it. Like a couple of innovators, artists understood what the medium was supposed to be and knew exactly how to use it. So I'm curious to check out this documentary and the films.
I was gonna say, and check out some of the films.
Absolutely,
absolutely. They're really their history is really fascinating. Like, the movies they made together are really great. Emmerich Pressburger, he's this Hungarian Jew who flees to England. He doesn't know a word of English. He has to learn the language, and then becomes like the premier screenwriter of his era.
Amazing.
In another language that he's never spoken before.
Put him to shame.
He got there in the early 30s, I think, and then by the 40s, he was writing the best screenplays of anybody in the fucking country. And like, basically, like, Michael Powell was kind of the actual director, and Pressburger was the screenwriter, and they kind of both produced the films, but they shared the entire credit with each other.
That's
like
nice.
They really felt like they were both contributing equally to what was happening on screen, which is cool to see. them kind of
I dig that
manner.
collaboration. I dig that. Like, we should share credits if we're really going to, rather than just fucking taking credit for all of it. Like, hey, I mean, I mentioned Tarantino recently. I know for Pulp Fiction, there is, a subsequent screenplay writer that Tarantino took a lot of credit for after the film started to gain acclaim. And it's one of those things where it's it'd be nice if you actually shared the credit with the people who wrote your sequences, who actually did and contributed to what you were doing.
Well, yeah, or even directors that have filmographers that really are what make it sometimes, right? Like Scorsese, or they work with particular writers. Or what,
George Lucas. No.
They actually make it decent.
Yeah.
But yeah, that now we put so much on the director that sometimes the other people who really are supporting him and they always work with get lost.
Right. Yeah. And I think, some directors are better at that and some aren't. Like, I think Scorsese has done a good job of making sure that people know who Thelma Schoonmaker is, right? And like, she's probably the best editor of the last 50 years and pretty much only works on Scorsese movies. But like, a lot of the reason that they have the tone and the movement that they do is because of the job that Thelma does. She's so good. Like, she started with him at Raging Bull and she's edited every one of his movies since then. And like, he's good about getting her opportunities to talk to the camera and to, be out there and for people to know who she is. And she's won a couple Oscars for her work on his films. And, it depends on the filmmaker and whether they want to promote the people that they work with or whether they don't. And, it's disappointing when you see, directors kind of minimizing the impacts of people that they work with.
All right. Well, we've talked about that as an art form. John, what did you watch?
I would recommend this movie,
form?
by the way, just in case that was unclear.
It was pretty clear that you were recommending
Made in England, the films of Powell and Pressburger. Go check it out. Go watch anything from Powell and Pressburger. They're very talented.
You heard it here first, folks. Dixon loves England.
I generally do not like England. I've been there. I did not like it. The best vacation I've ever been on was like 12 days in Scotland and ended in 2 days in England.
When he learned about how England sucks.
Scotland. And then like everyone was the friendliest person I had ever met. It was just such a cool place. And then I got to England and everyone was just a raging asshole.
That's pretty true.
And when you go from Scotland to England by train, you know that you've crossed into England because everything goes from green to gray immediately.
Even the food.
Yes, literally everything.
Oh my God. Amazing.
Nice.
Yeah. Don't recommend going there, but watch the movies. Go to Scotland. It's a beautiful place and they have lots of whiskey there. So,
well, when this episode started, everybody, there's a little bit of fluidity to how we talk about the movies that we bring to recommend or refute.
Are you changing your movie, John?
Might be changing.
Oh my God. This has never happened
I
before.
initially started with a conviction, folks, to talk about a 1985. It is the first, quote unquote, according to the back of the box, 1985 shot on video horror thriller slasher called Blood Cult.
That sounds wrong.
Which is, I'm sure that's not true, but it's basically, you can just sum that up in it. It's a giallo by way of Andy Griffith, and you're good enough to go. Matlock tries to discover why the cult's trying to kill people. Fuck it, Blood Cult. There you go. I want to go into a little bit of a double feature, but really I have a primary here, and that is Ronin, 1998's Ronin by John Frankenheimer.
I never walk into a place I don't know how to walk out of. Oh, I know you. I don't think so. It's a small world. Not in my experience.
He was hired to lead a mission.
This is what we're after.
To recover a package.
We need to take it intact from several men who will be intent on preventing this.
Nice. My kind of job.
That some are willing to die for.
Relax, darling. Just a game. Could you take a picture of me and my wife? Get the background. This guy goes for the case. Other guy's protecting the principal. Oh, they're good.
And everyone is willing to kill for.
I want $100,000. I want it up front. I want another $100,000 when you get the case. Get in the car!
United Artists presents Robert De Niro.
I won't hurt you.
Ronin.
You worried about saving your own skin? Yeah, I am. Covers my body.
Which has been, John Frankenheimer's been mentioned in the previous episode.
I've mentioned him very recently twice.
few,
I talked
yeah.
about Seconds in a recent recommend or refute, and
Yeah.
then I talked about him in 7 Days in May in the JFK episode.
Exactly. And so to try to get to why I watched Ronin, directed by John Frankenheimer, I want to talk about The Man from Hong Kong. I'm not going to really try to take too much time here, but The Man from Hong Kong is a 1975 Ozploitation film directed by Brian Trenchard Smith, who also did Stunt Rock, which was also a trailer put at the front of the 35 millimeter presentation of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. How about that, folks? I don't know if we're ever going to talk about Once
George
Upon a Time in
Lazenby
Hollywood.
is in this?
George Lazenby is, in fact, in that. And I fucking love The Man from Hong Kong. It's a fun film. It's a lot of explosions, shitty choreography, not as shitty as Death Promise, but shitty enough.
Promise.
And
Gonna get you.
And it's also starring like a Taiwanese martial artist who is sort of at the core of all of it. Dixon, I feel like you and I would have a great time with a whiskey, just watching it.
Yeah.
Really enjoy ourselves to that. Has a lot of car chases.
Something about
in it.
crime kingpins.
Yeah. There's a crime kingpin and car chases and whatever. So I showed this to my uncle, thinking my uncle, who loved The Stuntman, who recommended The Stuntman to me, would also dig a movie about low-budget stuntmen doing
Is
low-budget
Peter O'Toole
stuntman
in it,
things.
though?
That's the problem. Peter O'Toole is nowhere to be found in this. Neither is Steve Railsback, which is good. Fortunate
I just
enough.
want my rails back.
And his raspberry snatch.
41 different flavors of ice cream. And all that fucking syrup!
I believe it's a strawberry snatch.
Royal Bavarian chocolate misty.
Whatever. It's an ice cream. It doesn't matter.
It's an ice cream genital thing.
It's fucking fine. Which is my uncle's favorite part, is that he fucking got a frostbite for a cop by putting his head into ice cream.
If you have not listened to our Stuntman episode, folks,
please go do that.
Go back and check that out.
God, what a wild time.
What a time to be alive.
So I showed my uncle The Man from Hong Kong. He had never seen it, which I was surprised of because I thought he would have seen something like that, having seen Stuntman. Jesus.
Yeah.
But he didn't. And the entire time he bitched and moaned, and he complained that the choreography is nowhere near as good as a Jackie Chan film. And that,
well, that's
I
a
was like,
high
come
bar,
on, man. That's such a high bar.
Yeah.
And then when he got to the car chases, he was like, oh, this is just shit. This is absolute shit, John.
This isn't Steve McQueen and Bullet.
Exactly. And he talked about that and how like, there's all this bullshit with the continuity and all this other stuff. And the moment that the movie ended, it was 11:30 at night. My uncle's like in his 70s. And he was like, well, I'll show you 10 minutes of Ronin. We watched the whole fucking movie of Ronin because he got really invested in it, which I did too.
Right.
At a certain point at the hour mark of Ronin, I said, hey, Uncle, I thought we were going to watch 10 minutes of this. It's a solid 2-hour film.
Did you watch the 4K? There's 4K of this.
He only had the Blu-ray. He didn't have the 4K,
Ah.
but I want to fucking watch the 4K
maybe.
now because it was everything he said it would be. It was fantastic. There are some parts of it that I've seen a bunch of friends on Letterboxd. They gave it a lot of 5s. I think it's deserving more of a 4.5 because
That's
at one
still
point,
pretty good.
yeah, at one point it does take a little bit of a break to give an Olympic gold medalist a little time to just do what she does.
Some Jim Cotta
A
shit
little Jim
going on
Cotta,
here?
yeah, she's a.
Is there a pommel horse conveniently placed in the middle of a town square?
There is
Right,
not, but there's
yeah.
an ice rink conveniently placed in the middle of the plot.
Okay.
Okay, all
And she
right.
gets to do a whole fucking routine in the middle of that,
I like it.
at which it slows down and you're like, all right, sure, I'll let you do it by this point. But yeah,
Katarina Witt?
my uncle was
That's
trying
who
to.
it was? That's awesome.
Yeah, my uncle was trying to ruin this movie. He kept leaning over to me and foreshadowing everything that would happen in it.
Hey, that's Robert De Niro.
Yeah, he was like, hey, this is going to be important. And I was like, shut up. I'm trying to fucking watch this movie.
This was directed by John Frankenstein.
John Frankenstein. John Frankenstein's monster. It's fantastic. First of all, Robert De Niro plays the character you think Robert De Niro would play in any movie, which is a tight-lipped fucking dude who doesn't tell anybody shit and gets operated on while he's alive and awake. It's fucking insane.
Wait, so it is a Frankenstein thing?
Yeah, he's literally just like, yeah, go ahead and do that there, and you go that, and you do that. Now, if you don't mind, I think the operation's over. I'm going to pass out. And then he fucking just does. It's an intense...
He decides to sleep after the operation.
Yeah. I'm not going to spoil any of the shit of why it leads up to that or what happens.
Is this a face-off scenario?
No, it's not.
No.
It's much more grounded, but still stupid.
Well, it's hard to be less grounded than Face Off.
It's true. Yeah. But Ronin, much to it has a whole diatribe in the middle of it where it talks about fucking the Japanese samurai and their lords that were lost, and it's got a whole metaphor about the fucking mercenaries. I don't give a fuck about any of that shit. The car chase scenes in this, they got F1 drivers to do the stunts in it.
Really?
And so you have F1 drivers not only driving, they're not driving on fucking straightaways like American roads. This is French fucking curves. French cities. This
it's
is
like Monaco type shit.
This is narrow alleyways where the stunt people aren't just the drivers. There are fucking civilians that duck out of the way and almost get fucking clipped. Like hit by these cars going 70, 80 miles an hour. It is in fucking tense. It's so good. And of course, when a fruit stand shows up, you know that fruit stands get fucking plowed through. Like Ronin, it surpassed my expectations. It started with Sean Bean, and I thought he was going to get killed.
Well, he's Sean Bean. He's going to
somehow
get killed.
He doesn't get killed, but to the plot's dismay, it's because of other reasons. And I was like, what
Sean
the
Bean,
fuck's
you're
happening?
telling me that there's a movie where Sean Bean survives till the end credits.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
I mean, we never technically see him again, but it's fine because we know he's out there somewhere being Sean Bean. And Jean Reno
fighting orcs off
just
screen.
fine.
Jean Reno and Robert De Niro have the most broy relationship ever, and it's great to see on screen.
Yeah.
It's not since Point Break has broiness exemplified itself.
What about The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent?
It is an equivalent kind of broiness to
Okay.
the point where the only thing that I would say negative about this movie is that it kind of sort of toes the line for the CIA.
What?
Whoops.
We
Sorry,
just talked about
everybody.
JFK, John.
I know.
We are an
but
anti-CIA podcast.
it does, towards the end, it kind of does one of those things where, like, it's like the end of Dark Knight Rises when Bruce Wayne and Alfred see each other. It's like Robert De Niro and the CIA maybe sort of see each other at a cafe and they tip hats because, hey, you kind of helped me out in a pinch. Oops. Like that kind of shit.
I think this is the start of a beautiful friendship.
Yeah, that's right. I think this is the start of toppling many governments. But it is a compelling mystery, much like we enjoyed with JFK.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more fictional. It feels like one of those thrillers written by like a Tom Clancy kind of fucking crowd sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my only negative to it, is that like past a certain point, like this feels like boomer material. Like it feels like it's really geared towards an older generation that enjoys that sort of thing. But goddamn, if the filmmaking didn't win me over, if John Frankenheimer didn't pull out all the stops, like, man, there's so much to this that we were at like, I don't remember what fucking time mark it was, but my uncle was like, wake up, John. It's time to fucking lock into the movie. And I was like, I was awake the whole goddamn time. Okay. Like
just because I'm not talking doesn't mean I'm not paying attention to the movie.
You're being fucking rhetorical right now. I appreciate it, but also, God damn it, this movie. So, Ronin, 1998. I fucking highly recommend that film.
That sounds really interesting. John, I feel like we need to trade Frankenheimer films. So,
Yeah.
Like, I have recently
We
talked
should do
about
it.
Seconds and 7 Days in May. You should watch those. I need to watch Ronin. I also am curious to revisit the original Manchurian Candidate, which I did not like. I've seen both versions of the Manchurian Candidate. Didn't care for either of them. Frank Sinatra is in the Frankenheimer original version.
Yeah.
He's not a good actor, but I'm now intrigued to go back and watch it, given the recent Frankenheimer films.
You're lucky
I've
he's
seen.
dead and the mob's distanced from him.
That's a good point. He also, he was a piece of shit because he loved Jack Daniels.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the worst whiskey that's ever been made by mankind.
I have a feeling if you watch Ronin, you might come out with the same conclusions that I did, that some parts of it don't work for you. There's also terrible green screen for at least 5 minutes of the movie. And I was just like, oof.
I bet on the
just
4K
rough.
that looks real bad.
Yeah, on the Blu-ray it
Yeah.
looked really fucking bad. But, I was like, hey, the rest of this movie makes up for a lot of it. And they almost crash as many cars as the Blues Brothers towards the end. It's fucking insane.
I love the Blues
Nice.
Brothers.
Oof.
You love seeing that carnage. All
Oh,
those
my
police cars
God.
just piling into each other unnecessarily, one after the other.
There is so much to this.
oh,
But
man.
yeah, so Ronin, I would recommend. Man from Hong Kong, also recommend. Blood Cult, I didn't really mention too much, but fuck it.
Pass.
Are there any famous Motown singers in this movie?
Not
like there are
to-
in the Blues Brothers.
No, there are no famous Motown singers. This is a very white cast.
There's Aretha Franklin does not make an appearance. in this
Unfortunately,
film?
not.
Oh.
Stellan
Famous
Skarsgård.
Cab Calloway is not-
No,
is it no?
no,
Oh.
he's
Yeah.
not. I'm looking over it right now, and yep, nobody here really looks to
Famous
fit
ice
that
skaters.
bill.
Yeah. Famous ice skaters says very white. That's a white person
Yeah,
thing.
even that, very, very white. So it's a rough go.
But there is a samurai appropriation going on.
Yes, absolutely. There's
Yeah.
even a diorama and miniatures of samurai, but
Oh.
no actual Japanese people to be found in this film.
Nice.
So there you go, Ronin.
Does that mean we can also get the Marlon Brando Island of Dr. Monroe on? Is that on the table?
No, you can't.
Wait, what does that have to do with Ronin?
That's a Frankenheimer.
No shit.
Yeah.
Really? Oh my god.
There's
I've never
some
seen
later-
The Island of Dr. Monroe, but I
There's some
cannot
later
believe that John
dip.
Frankenheimer made it. Given like the absolute skill that I have seen from him in Seconds and 7 Days in May, I have heard so many horrible things about The Island of Dr. Monroe. I cannot believe. Monroe?
It's
Was I
Monroe.
saying about Marilyn Monroe? Yeah. I can't imagine that Frankenheimer and Brando would be involved in such a shit show, but
I think that's that tail end of Brando not giving any fucks.
yeah, and maybe
there's
Frankenheimer
that-
was just like almost dead at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Man.
the late stage Marlon Brando, the like late stage Harrison Ford. They give absolutely no fucks, and you just have to work the movie around.
Oh
them
man, our
doing whatever it is.
society today does not talk enough about how Harrison Ford is a terrible actor that has just
Right.
devolved. Like he was never a good actor. Let's be very clear about that. But like it's gotten to the point where it's just like, why is he ever filmed anymore? He's
Right.
an old crotchety man that clearly never wants to speak
Right,
to
right.
another human being for the rest of his
Yes.
life. And he keeps being dragged onto massive movie sets. And he's like, I don't care. I'm flipping you off at the camera. And they're just like green screening that out
Yeah.
while he's,
He
just,
mumbles.
I
his
will
way
say
through
it is co-directed. Island of Dr. Monroe is co-directed by Richard
Okay.
Stanley, who wrote Color Out of Space in 2019.
Somebody had to step in.
Oh man, I love that movie.
That's fucking wild. Anyways, so yeah, I would recommend Ronin. I recommend The Man from Hong Kong if you're into a little more exploitation cinema. I don't
All
care
right.
about Blood Cult. Fuck it.
No Blood Cult.
Fuck it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
With a title like that,
Is De Niro good in Ronin? Because
Oh,
I
come
feel
on.
like
Do you have to ask if De Niro's good?
I do have to ask because I feel like De Niro is almost only good in Scorsese movies.
No.
There are movies
No,
that
there's-
Scorsese hasn't directed that he is good in, but they are
Yeah.
few and far between. And at
with you.
1998, I like that's kind of you're getting toward the point where De Niro doesn't
just
give a
does other
shit
things
anymore.
and-
And like
Yeah.
he now like he's been at a point for a long time in his career where he only decides to give a shit if Scorsese is behind the camera.
Let me just
There's
preface how his performance
There's
is
good De
given,
Niro
okay?
and there's caricature De Niro, where he's a
Yeah.
caricature of himself.
This is, you know, but
is
we're
this
talking
Meet
about like
the Parents De Niro?
no, because
Yeah.
Heat's around this time, right?
He
Isn't
was 95.
95. Like there's that, and like this De Niro. Okay, think about this. Travis Bickle goes into government agency and does some government shit. That's
an interesting sequel to
right,
to
like
Taxi
Big Taxi Driver would go to that.
He gets
but
recruited into the CIA
it
after
has that
doing
kind
his
of
assassination.
He has that kind of bold confidence that Bickle does throughout this entire performance. And it's one of those things where you're like, what the
I don't
fuck?
know much about the CIA, but I'd like to.
and he does a great job playing that kind of ignorance throughout it. And it's like intentional, not intentional, doesn't fucking matter. You just you take De Niro at his word because the whole movie is done through De Niro's perspective, like knowing exactly what he knows at the moment he knows it. And it's really well done. I feel like he conceals and keeps a lot from you. And he also has some secrets of his own that like they play out the way that, you know, the movie wants them to. And at that moment you're like, okay, I think I figured it out, but maybe not, maybe whatever. And so I feel like it conceals its mystery well. De Niro keeps a good poker face the entire time. There's some parts of it that like they definitely play up that bit, but I thought he did a great job. I really enjoyed De Niro's performance with it. But it is very much a heist movie. Like towards the middle of it, I was like, is this a fucking Guy Ritchie film?
You
What's
son
going
of a bitch,
on?
I'm in.
Yeah, I just was like, what are we going to see Jason Statham next? How does this go? But there was enough twists and turns, and like for half the movie, you don't know what the fuck's going on until the latter half when you're like, okay, shit, now I'm in. Like I totally know. I know. I'm pretty sure I know. Yeah, it's exactly how it plays it. So.
Given my experience with Frankenheimer with 7 Days in May and Seconds, I would assume that he is very anti-CIA. You talk about the CIA presence in this film. Like, what is the message of this movie? What is it trying to say?
There is there is a like Pulp Fiction-esque sort of objective to be had, like the gold fucking box, sort of the briefcase is. That just sort of proves it to me is a testament to what the fuck do we even enjoy about espionage films? Like the stunts are really fucking cool, but by the end of the film, looking back on it, I was like, what did we achieve here? Because there's so much lost to gain something that nobody will ever know about. Is sort of like how I saw it. And it sort of delivered that message. And there's no telling whether or not it's good or bad. It just is what it is, which is wild. Like there's an Irish terrorism group. There's a Russian terrorist group involved. The fucking CIA's involved. All this other shit kind of comes together to make this clusterfuck of it doesn't matter. You're just supposed to do your marching orders. And by the end of it, I was like, holy fuck, what is the cost of this? This is insane. So that was kind of my takeaway from it. Whether or not anybody else going and watching it would do that, I don't know. But that is how I walked away from the scenes afterwards. My uncle was obviously just obsessed with the fucking car stunts, but I was like, holy shit.
I mean, it sounds like
so
cool
much
car
more.
stunts.
Yeah, there's so much more to it to me than like, it's not just simple good guy, bad guy shit. So.
Are you saying it's more complicated than the Fast and the Furious franchise?
I mean, De Niro doesn't have friends. He has family, but it is different.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
All right, Ryan, bring us in.
I'll bring us around. Quick mention. I probably mentioned it, I think, last time that I was going to go watch Deadpool Wolverine. I literally watched it after we finished recording.
Okay.
I fucking rather
Was it
enjoyed
good? Did you like it?
I really rather enjoyed it.
All right.
It is. It's interesting. I would totally be like, Dixon, you wouldn't like it. Though it does like fucking make fun of the MCU, it still is just like
more
in a way. Yeah. It really, really turns into that meta textual kind of thing for a lot of the humor. Though I will also say it probably is like 90% Deadpool and Wolverine trying to kill each other extremely viscerally, like maybe the most violence I've ever seen. It is hard to have a movie be more violent and not just be all violence.
You seriously are saying that is the most violent movie you've ever seen?
I mean, the whole it gives nothing away because it's just the opening scene. The whole opening scene is after Deadpool digs up Wolverine's body from the end of Logan, and then just proceeds to kill, I don't know, hundreds of people with each part of the body as it gets like smashed more and more apart, and you know, in their heads, in their dicks, like everything, blood, brains going everywhere.
Are they villains in this movie?
No. No, they save a whole universe. They're absolutely
just committing
heroes.
mass murder and they're good guys.
Yep.
Yeah, but they're
there's no like winking or irony in any of this.
Why not?
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, like,
all right.
I would say though, a lot of the violence is literally the two of them trying to kill each other, which they can't do. So they just constantly stab each other over and over and over again.
I've never seen a Deadpool movie.
He has the same healing factor.
You've never
as
seen a
Wolverine.
Deadpool movie?
No.
Gotta at least watch one.
I'm allergic to Ryan
Okay,
Reynolds.
hold on. Maybe this one is the one. I was going to talk about something else completely different, but see, we're already sidetracked. Maybe this is the one because they also make fun of Ryan Reynolds like within it.
No, that doesn't sell Dixon. Okay, just
that doesn't
you let
sell
me
Dixon?
handle this. I'll get him drunk and we'll watch it. Brian, you carry on with what you're actually recommending or refuting.
No, I rather enjoyed it. Darla rather enjoyed it. It's funny. It's senseless violence. It's funny senseless violence.
I'm glad that you found some happiness in it, Ryan. That's hard to find in this world.
Yes, it is. It is. It just is a complete like. It's ice cream overload, just sugar overload. If you're into that, you know what
Absolutely.
I mean?
Yeah.
All right, so move on. I'll talk about an actually good movie because I'll actually, Deadpool Wolverine is what it is and I had fun, but let me talk about a good movie. I did watch Little Miss Sunshine with my family.
I couldn't help noticing Dwayne has stopped speaking.
Oh, yeah, he's taken a vow of silence.
Cheryl, remember when Olive was runner-up in the regional Little Miss Sunshine? Well, the girl who won had to forfeit her crown. I don't know why, something about diet pills, but anyway, now she has a place in the state contest in Redondo.
We're going to California.
There are two kinds of people in this world, winners and losers. Sarcasm is the refuge of losers.
How much do I owe you for those pearls of
Oh,
wisdom?
that one's on the house.
You're not going to charge me
Stop
for
it.
that?
Laugh it up.
He started it.
A la mode translates as in the fashion. A la mode.
Frank, shut up. Everybody push!
Dwayne, that's your name, right? Are you getting any? My God, man.
Dad.
You should be getting that young
Dad.
stuff. I know you're a homo and all, but maybe you can appreciate this.
Dad, that's enough. Stop it. You're not going to shut me up. I still got Nazi bullets in my head. Hey!
Oh, how about that?
Stuck or something.
Try pulling in front of here.
Oh, jeez, I'm being pulled over. Everybody, just pretend to be normal.
Where's Olive?
Yes, I know it's R-rated. Give me a moment on that. But Little Miss Sunshine is like.
Was Ella okay? Did she survive?
Oh, come on. She had negative opinions.
Well, okay.
In context.
All right.
She's
All right.
Yeah.
So I've been going to these dance competitions.
Go on.
They've been going to these dance competitions, and there are always moments where some group comes on, and I'm just like, these kids are too young for this, and my mind just always goes to Little Miss Sunshine, like over and over. And I was like, all right, finally, I have to like watch this with my family, so that then I can keep referencing Little Miss Sunshine, and they'll get it. But then I knew that like it's R-rated. Yep. Mostly there's like cussing, but we watch movies where there's cussing. I know there was one amazing Alan Arkin scene that I needed to skip, and I managed to catch that and skip that. Which is they're in the van, and Alan Arkin is talking to Paul Dano's character, his grandson, and he's like, "You just gotta fuck a lot of women." That's what you got to do, kid. Just fuck a ton of women. I wish I just fucked a ton of women when I was a kid.
God,
just
I wish my
all of
grandfather
them, every way, everywhere.
Solid
Yeah,
advice. Really.
yeah.
Man,
And like that was the part where I was like,
that kind of advice as a child.
Consensually, of course.
My life would have been so different.
yeah. So I was like, I paused right before it skipped it and was like, it's not relevant to the plot, kids, which it isn't. But I did forget that there is a slightly relevant to the plot point where Alan Arkin's sends Steve Carell's character in to buy nudie magazines when they stop at the gas station. And it ends up being relevant again later that they come out. So I kind of, that we sort of just had to hand wave as to like, our kids are old enough to know like that shit's out there. Moving on. But otherwise it's that R-rated, like they cuss, there's some talk of suicide, but that's a thing that happens in the world. Like that, you know, it's R-rated because some people aren't comfortable with it, but realistically it's there. And even it was interesting because Toni Collette and Steve Carell's
fucking love
brother.
Toni Collette.
Yeah, Toni Collette's awesome. This whole thing is fucking awesome.
We're going to get into
Toni
a hereditary argument right now, aren't we, Ryan?
Yeah, no, like, I love Toni Collette. I love Toni Collette in Hereditary. Hereditary. Steve Carell has attempted to commit suicide, and he's now having to stay with the family in order to, you know, be protected, make sure he doesn't attempt again. And Toni Collette is having to explain to her daughter, like, what happened. And Greg Kinnear, very awesome in this, like, probably my favorite Greg Kinnear role.
The only Greg Kinnear
that feels
role
like
I know
a low
about.
bar. Yeah.
It is a low bar, but
he's
this
done
is
a lot of very
he's perfect.
Christian movies in the last 10 years.
Oh, he's no Kirk Cameron.
He's
no.
he's had a Kirk Cameron-esque career of late.
Kevin Sorbo, maybe?
Yeah.
This is a great fit because Greg Kinnear is trying too hard to keep the family up and together and living on bullshit, and
That
then
feels
eventually
like
it breaks
something
down.
he'd
So
be
it's a
good
good
at,
fit.
yeah.
It's a good fit. And so, yeah, he's like, oh, we don't need to tell her, like he wants to hide it. And then Toni Collette's like, no, it happens. I'm going to explain it. It is exactly the feeling I had, like, as a parent, where I'm like, it happens. Be honest, be truthful about it. Basically, the plot, if you don't know, this family's fucked up. The youngest one, she had done a beauty contest because their cousin was in one, and the winner of that contest gets sick, and so she ends up getting to go to the Little Miss Sunshine contest as the winner for their area. And it's like they have to get to California from New Mexico, and it ends up being like everybody has to go in order to make this work. Like they can't leave the brother alone. Paul Dano, they can't leave his character alone. He's, you know, they probably could, but they're not gonna because they're that way. Like Greg Kinnear's the only one that could drive the van because it's stick shift. Like Toni Collette can't drive it, so Grandpa has to come because we can't leave Grandpa alone because he's an asshole, racist asshole.
What is the family dynamic between Carell, Collette, and Kinnear?
So it definitely is one of those movies where it starts off where everybody kind of hates everybody except for the youngest, or little, you know, not, she isn't Little Miss Sunshine, that's the thing, but essentially Little Miss Sunshine.
I was here, like, who is the couple? Who is the weird uncle? Like, what's the?
Yeah. So Greg Kinnear and Toni Collette are together. Okay. Greg Kinnear is failing to sell his self-help books with his 5 or 9 steps or some shit. And his whole thing is like
999 plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can only be a winner. You can be a winner or a loser, and you have to keep going until you're a winner. And there's no other acceptance. And if you're a loser, you're worthless.
And that's not
right.
Playing
Like he
out
just
in
really
his
pushes
personal
it,
life.
and it's not playing out in his own life. Like that's not happening. But he's not admitting it. Right. His bookseller, played by Bryan Cranston.
Oh hell
he
yeah.
keeps trying to. Yeah, he's not answering the calls. Like he keeps trying to call him and connect with him throughout
like
the course of the movie. He's his agent trying to sell the book, and he's like, "Hey, what's the update? What's the update? You told me it was going to happen." Right. And so he's kind of in that spot where he's not admitting it. He's kind of been shitty to both of his kids, trying to push this, like, you have to be a winner and there's nothing else narrative.
Yeah.
Right. Paul Dano, their oldest, he is just fucking done with all of them. He's been reading philosophy books. He's into Nietzsche.
Nice.
He decides to take a vow of silence because he wants to go to flight school. He wants to go into the Air Force. and he decides he's going to take a vow of silence until he's in. And he hasn't been talking for like a year at this point or something. He's really been hard on it. This is the first time I ever saw Paul Dano, and like immediately I was like, I fucking love this guy.
Oh yeah.
And I have been correct. Paul Dano is fucking awesome.
Paul Dano is great.
He is awesome. So then,
this is before There Will Be Blood, right?
Yes,
very much so.
Yep.
Was
and that just
before
codified
The Girl
it.
Next Door?
I don't know.
Around
yeah,
the same time, I think.
Probably around the same time.
Wait, who does Carell play?
Carell is Toni Collette's brother.
Okay.
Right. He is the world's second most Proust scholar. Is that I remember if he calls himself the first or second most, but he studies this like little known author, and that's his whole thing in college, is teaching on just this one shitty author. He had a relationship. Yeah, he had a relationship with one of his male students that then left him for the only other person who studies this one author.
Oh no! Oh my god!
And then like Carell's life proceeded to unravel from there to the point that he's attempts suicide.
Yeah.
Through this, he kind of like picks himself back up as this movie goes. They all kind of like realize where they're at, but essentially you're kind of like a group of losers, right? Like that's where they're starting off. And then at the end of the movie, they're like a group of losers, but they're okay with it. Alan Arkin plays Greg Kinnear's father. So he's the grandfather. He pretty much just cusses right out the gate. You see him snort heroin. He got kicked out of like multiple homes. That's why he's here, is because he can't stay anywhere. He gets kicked out of like any facility they try to send him to, any like elderly community. They just
won't take his money. They're like, fuck it.
They won't let him take drugs.
Problems.
Yeah, he just creates too many problems. A great role for Alan Arkin. And so yeah, it like they go across the desert. Hilarious shit fucking happens, but also really emotional notes. And yeah, the first time I saw it, I was just like, this is awesome. I actually think this is one of the movies that really kicked off the like indie movies that actually like were doing well. They're shot on this cheaper budget, where like the Fox Searchlight kind of those movies hit in that early 2000s and actually got through to people and did decently well. This movie did really well in the theater, and otherwise you would think it wouldn't be, because it just is the kind of movie that is like a smaller movie. And I don't know that I hear it talked about now, but really going back and watching it, I was like, fucking love it again. Like every moment of it. I just think it's a great movie. It has a great thing. The end of it's like, by the time they get there, it's obvious that this pageant that they're going to is fucked up. Like child pageants are.
Yeah.
But the daughter, Olive, like is a regular fucking kid, and they're then hit with this like, do we let her go out when we know she's not going to win this thing because of what it is? And like, what, right? That's kind of the conundrum at the very end, where they're all kind of coming around to this like, so what? Like if she wants to, so what about this contest? Like fuck it, right? It's kind of like what they all get around to. And so yeah, I if you haven't watched this, Dixon, you said you haven't watched it.
I have not.
You should watch it.
It's great.
You should watch it. It's really
I've only
fucking
seen
great.
It once. I saw it once before. I think it was like, it was before my college education. And I just remember being like, something's great about this, and I don't know what yet. But I feel like I'm going to really appreciate it again if I watch it after like a certain period of time. Because I just thought
have
it was
you seen
like,
it since then?
No, I have not. So
No.
I'm down to watch it with you and kind of relive that moment. But I just remember this comes out this movie came out in 2006, which is a year after The 40-Year-Old Virgin, which is kind of wild because it's like a post-Judd Apatow world where you still have...
You think Carell had his chest hair back by this time?
Oh, probably. I'm sure he grew it. He's probably grown it back fast enough.
Probably took like 2 days.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where like it exists alongside the more flippant, you talk about Paul Dano being into Nietzsche and like this nihilism that sort of perpetrates one of the characters in this film. I feel like a lot of Judd Apatow films are just like very flippant and irreverent in a sort of nihilistic way of just like, yeah, there only is what there is, and like everything else is kind of fucking bullshit. But to see Little Miss Sunshine against that, like in an era where I was enjoying those other films too and being like, this is funny. And then seeing Little Miss Sunshine and being like, this is funny, but also there's something here that like I don't really understand or I want to process more when I'm older. It's kind of weird to think about at that age. So I'm curious to see it again in a new updated lens for myself. But yeah, I'm on the same track with you, Ryan. I remember it being really fucking good.
Yeah.
So
I think this might be like the 5th or 6th time I've seen it. But
wow.
The last times I saw it was back. Like I saw it in the theater, and then whenever it came out on DVD, I got it and then watched it and showed it to people a whole bunch. And then it's kind of like, then there's like a decade between there than when I haven't watched it. And so going back and being like, oh yeah.
Do you still have it on DVD? And did you watch it on that same DVD with your family?
No, I actually don't think I have like any of my DVD. I know we talk about physical media, but I'm really
How
bad
dare
at it.
you.
I have a whole pile of VHSs over here though.
Oh, okay, sure. Why not? You're forgiven.
But yeah, I think I dropped most of my DVDs. Now I bought it digitally, which means it's going to disappear on me again one day. But
yeah.
I remember we watched that weird John Huston VHS at your house in Austin before you moved away.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Oh, yeah,
California.
Yeah. It was great.
Interesting. I have not seen this movie, but one of my favorite movies that I saw in college was Zombieland, and Abigail Breslin is great in that movie, and I like knew that she had become famous from Little Miss Sunshine, but I just never got around to seeing it. But I still love the original Zombieland. The sequel is ass.
No,
don't fucking watch Zombieland 2.
That.
But the first Zombieland, I actually still really love as a movie. Just like a really fun, absurd, over the top action comedy. And Woody Harrelson and Jesse Eisenberg and Emma Stone are great. And Abigail Breslin is really good in her role in the film. But I'm curious to hear. I have not seen Little Miss Sunshine. Like, how is she in that movie as a child actor 2 years younger than she was in Zombieland? You mentioned that she is kind of providing this essence as just this kid who has to go through this fucked up environment, which sounds to me like kind of what she does in Zombieland. I'm curious as to kind of the impact that you feel she has on the film and what she brings to it.
Yeah, this is one of those movies where I'm like, I couldn't imagine anyone else in any single role other than who's there.
Yeah.
Like they're just, it's just perfect. And
what
that
if
might
Nicolas
be
Cage played the Abigail Breslin role?
Yeah, he would bring something to it. The ending would probably be more awesome. That's true, but it'd be hard to get to. I'm now trying to imagine
what if
him
Orson Welles
dancing,
played
dancing
the
at
Greg
the,
Kinnear role?
Orson Welles' fat ass is just there wheezing into the microphone in the van.
It may be the actors adding a lot to it. Like, I don't know how the filming of this movie went, like how much they got to add to it and be it that gets there. Breslin is the right amount of like heart.
Yeah,
she's not jaded the way kind of everyone else is.
I remember that.
She
naive.
really is just like naive, kind of about the whole thing. In that almost in the way you're like, I wish we could be that way.
Yeah.
When she is kind of challenged by Kinnear, the other ones kind of jump in, and there's these scenes that have stuck out to me for years that I think of. And a good example of like kind of how the whole dynamic works. They stop to get a meal. Kinnear's like, you can only spend X numbers of dollars on whatever you get. And she's like, oh, well, I'm going to get the waffles. And then she sees that it can come a la mode. And she's like, a la mode? Like, what is that? And the waitress is like, oh, it comes with, ice cream on it or whatever. And she's like, oh, okay. And then as soon as the waitress leaves, Kinnear goes into his like, I don't think beauty pageant people eat ice cream, right? Like that's got all that fat in it or whatever. And you can see everyone else, like especially Toni Collette's like kicking him under the table, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone else kind of just being like, dude, fucking right. And Breslin does the this is where I'm like, it's an acting, like not just like, oh, she's cute and it works. She does a really good job of that, like conflicted, like, I want the thing. I don't fully understand what you're saying. You're a parent and I have to trust you, right? Kind of thing. And then the others, Steve Carell and Arkin are like, well, I'll eat the ice cream if you're not going to eat the ice cream. Like, fuck,
Yeah.
I like ice cream. And then they start taking a bite and they're like, hey. And like Paul Dano's like, all right, I'll take a bite. And then they all start to eat it. And then she's like, no, give it to me before it's gone. Right. And then she like takes a bite of it and just instantly is like, like it's so good or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And like her being conflicted, she has these big old, like almost like Coke bottle glasses, and she does a good job of using them like as a prop too in some of the ways that she does it. I think is really good. It just works so well. It's not an annoying child actor by any stretch. Like it works, and you believe her at the age, right? That like that's that person, and in the moment, I think she does a great job.
Yeah. Nice.
What if Gary Busey played the Steve Carell
God
role?
damn it. You just keep bringing these hypotheticals. Just leave him with Quigley.
He plays her family dog. Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
I think Gary Busey is the family dog.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I'm like, there are really funny things that still stand out to me like all these years later, and I still found them absolutely funny. And there are real emotional beats, again, that like stood out to me all these years later, and they're still great.
Nice.
So yeah, you guys should check it out. I'd like to hear a follow up.
All right, yeah, no,
Sure.
I need to watch it.
Dixon and I will watch it. I haven't seen it in a long time, and you've never seen it, so it's
All
perfect.
right, sounds good. Well, that's all right to bring us to a close. And it sounds like we have a table of recommends and one you shouldn't watch it schlock movie.
You don't even have to mention it.
We don't even have to mention it.
It's fine.
Dixon has a recommend for the fucking mouthful.
England,
Powell
Made
and
in England's
movie.
colon,
Yeah.
the films of Powell and Pressburger. I also am recommending generally the films of Powell and Pressburger.
Powell and Pressburger. Sure.
Particularly The Red Shoes is very good.
Yes.
All right, John, that is
Like
a
sommelier
recommend
of
for
film.
a recommend for the Hong Kong Man.
The Man from Hong Kong.
The Man from Hong Kong.
Very
which
close,
is a great
Ryan.
exploitation film, and then a recommendation
And John
for
and
John Frankenheimer's Ronin.
yes, John and John's uncle recommend Ronin.
Yes, that's right. My uncle and I are here together to recommend that.
Yes. I recommend Little Miss Sunshine. My kids enjoyed Little Miss Sunshine. I think Darla enjoyed it, but I didn't ask her because I didn't want to get into whether it was appropriate or not. When the nudie magazines fell out of the back of the car and the policeman wink, wink, nod, nodded, so I can hear about having them.
Your kids liked the fast-forwarded, censored version that you provided.
Yes,
of course.
Yes, the TBS TV version of of Little Miss Sunshine. All right, that has been our Afterthoughts, recommend and or refute.
Oh, you almost you did it.
Yeah, now I have been 2 drinks in. Your host Ryan King, joining me as always,
John and or Garcia.
and our other special person.
4 drinks in, Michael Dixon. Thanks for putting up with our bullshit.